Hey guys, Jack here with Drilly Cards, just for a quick Twilight deck profile. So I played this at locals once again. I went 3-0 coming first. I played against Diva Hero, Forgs and Vayu. Twilight's kind of a fan favorite deck of mine in terms of it does all the good stuff Lightsworn does while also having the kind of bombs in the kind of dad package. So I'll kind of quickly go through the deck profile now. So in terms of Lightsworns, we've got, in terms of names, you got 3 Lila, 3 Raikou. The list is 41. The 41st card is the 3rd Raikou, and I kind of found myself, I think pretty much every game, kind of 2 Raikous would kind of come out when I was siding just for fitting other stuff in. I think you need the name just in terms of kind of making your mills better. But there's times, especially with the advent of stuff like GB, where it's just not great setting it, and kind of it's good to pitch, but like you don't actually want to draw it when you're going second into a board, because kind of if they're on a Raikou deck themselves and they're setting their own Raikou, it's getting 0 value. So that's kind of why I feel like it's fine to kind of side out in some number. And then the kind of obligatory brick 3 wolf, kind of drawing it feels terrible, but kind of milling it is the best feeling in this deck. So you kind of, it's worth the trade-off for that. And then the 1-ofs, Lumina, Arcus, Jane, Gareth, Erin and Celestia, all I think fairly standard. Kind of you can in certain matchups kind of side out certain names. So kind of at times you feel like you're taking out the Arcus just in terms of like you don't want the it just gets run over too easily in certain matchups and kind of triggering stuff you don't want to benefit against, but it also helps against crows. You kind of see later it protects your avarices, your monster reincarnations. And then in terms of the last of the light monsters, you got 2 JD, 2 honest, fairly standard. JD is just an established JD is so hard to deal with in this format, especially with just the pressure it applies every turn. And then honest, it punishes attacks into stuff that they really shouldn't, and then you can kind of swing advantage off that, so you can kind of protect particularly your Lumina to kind of get another turn out of it, just because it generates so many mills in kind of one turn that you kind of snowball into a JD from there. And then in terms of darks, Snipe Hunter, Plague, Necro, Kaiko, just in terms of the 1-ofs, all really strong. Some does come out in certain matchups where it's not as valuable. The Snipe Hunter is kind of really underrated in terms of just kind of an out for pitching dead wolves, or kind of an out to stuff like Stardust or Established Bodies, and it kind of helps chew through back row before you kind of drop your bombs in this deck. And also there's the element of grave manipulation where you can pitch the dark you need for dad to pop the back row and then push after that. Just the 2 crow in the main, kind of siding the 3rd, kind of felt incredible. The crows are just so good kind of with the spread in this current format that I think you need to, like, there's an argument to playing the 3rd in the main. And then your kind of bombs are these kind of darks. So your dad, your Sork, your cores, and your Trag. You kind of, both of these can be pseudo bombs in terms of kind of puts pressure on and deals with other cards before you need to drop the others. And then both of these, the versatility between them both is just incredible. And dad is kind of dad. It's game ending, especially if there's turns where you can drop both dad and JD and there's kind of no, they can deal with one but they can't deal with the other. And the last, just to help with mills, is the card tripper. Kind of, it's great. It does get sided out a lot, kind of where you know it's not going to trade, but into kind of hamster Raikou decks, it can either deal with the hamster and then trade with the Raikou while also replacing itself, which is very nice. Spells, your kind of Lightsworn engine is your draw power and your milling, kind of completely mandatory. There's no argument to cutting either of them. And then in terms of kind of graveyard recursion, you've got 2 reincarnation, 1 avarice. I think reincarnation is better in this version because you can kind of add back specific things and you can help manipulate the number of darks in your grave, whereas kind of avarice is good just to put in the pure Lightsworn, just to put back more resources. You kind of go through your deck quicker. And then your last 2 spells are heavy and allure. Allure just gives another deck more draw power. You see your bombs sooner. And then only 2 traps in the main, so you've got kind of Dust Shoot and Mirror Force. Dust Shoot kind of comes out every time I'm going second, and then Mirror Force is probably just the best game 1 trap just to kind of have in there. And then in terms of extra deck, you don't use it as much in this deck as you would in others, so kind of it's fairly standard. So there's one Chimera deck just for the contact fusion for any kind of your machine decks, and then in terms of synchros, Army Arm, Android, Catastor for your lower levels, and then your 6s are your Goyo, your Brio, your Tempest, and your Flamville. A similar enough Tempest can help with hand size and just getting rid of awkward cards and manipulating Grave. And then Brio, Goyo are just good with Plague. They're kind of the best 6 you can summon. And then Urquazes kind of come up situationally, but like never summoned. I kind of very rarely went into the extra deck this weekend. It's just kind of, it's there in case you need it. Black Rose for your 7s, you've got Dark End, Red Dragon Archfiend, Colossal, Thought, or Stardust for your 8s. All fairly standard. I think the only one I summoned out of this bunch was the Stardust, and then the last card, which I actually did summon, which came up for a game, was Mistworming back to back row and then dropping a JD. So kind of it's nice to be able to use it with Lumen to kind of clear bodies. Side, it's the third crow, comes in pretty much every game, kind of going second. It's one of those cards where it's always great to have in the deck. It's got so much versatility against kind of the really strong decks in terms of kind of your Forgs or your Vayu. It just punishes their overextension. And then one Consecrated Light comes in against Blackwings. It's a win condition. You can kind of side out of your Twilight package and go stronger, and then your siders are just good with clearing bodies. Good in GBs, good going second. It's a 2100 beater in the format that doesn't need a normal summon, which is incredible. Your spells, you got Soul Release, Lightning Vortex, and MSD. Soul Release came in once, I think, and same with Vortex, MST. It goes in against your kind of trap heavier decks if you need it, but it's always nice to have the additional push just to kind of clear tricky cases, especially decks that you know are sliding oppression. It just helps the JD stick, which is kind of your ultimate win condition in those games. And then in terms of traps, one Bottomless, one Torrential, one Prison. One of the benefits of this deck is it mills a lot, so kind of seeing one of these go to grave kind of creates the illusion that there might be a second. So it kind of forces the mind game of what the card itself might be, and it just helps. It makes your opponent think, which is always useful. And then Impression, similar scenario where if you set your own JD with an Oppression, there's very few cards that can kind of deal with that board, and it just helps insulate your JD from a dot coming back on their side, or a push into a Brian Act kind of bounce, or to deal, or Colossal. And then the last 3 cards are Trap Stuns. The versatility it kind of offers, I prefer to Decree. It kind of allows you to play it with, set it like worst case scenario, you set it as a bluff and they declare it, and you can use drop of Gores. Yeah, so it just offers more versatility than something like a Decree does, and I think that's kind of why it's helpful, because you can also punish the reckless greeds where they kind of chain their own recklesses, and it punishes kind of, you let them chain 2 or 3 and then you just flip it and just kind of they go -2 for no reason. But yeah, no, that's the end of the deck profile. Shout out to Druidy Cards for all his hard work in promoting the Edison scene here in Ireland, and thanks for watching.